I think we still need Rob to adjust it a little bit more this way, because it's still cutting off his chairs.
And they ain't put a
When he put it
microphone
up,
there,
I
we
think
just
he's got to
can't
rotate
read
it a little
something.
bit this way. We're fine today, because nobody's over here.
Yeah.
Okay, we're live.
All right, we ready?
Ready?
All right, let's have some fun. The O&P committee is hereby called to order. Let's have a good time. All right, public session. We got anybody here that would like to speak? Hearing none, let's move forward. Presentation and discussion items. Current projects, Ms. Eliezer, anything you want to highlight for us today?
I don't think so. Kyle, we spent a good bit of time, that was Tuesday afternoon, getting caught up with a number of these. We've added a few to the bottom of it, just again, tracking internally more than for this committee to know what's going on, just so we make sure that we see everything through that we had planned to do this year. So I don't think I have anything I want to touch on necessarily. Do you?
No, the dewatering project is still moving forward. Now they really don't know exactly when they're going to be on site, but they said they didn't want to be on site until they had equipment being delivered and stuff that they could actually do. He said they probably got a week's worth of work, and then if nothing comes in, then they're done. So they really didn't want to do it. So they said it technically could be pushed out to the beginning of March before they actually physically started. Because when they started, they said they want to knock it out.
Yeah, they won't do it.
Yeah.
On 24 down there, you said you need SOP for the duck pond pump station. Is that the only pump station that doesn't have any kind of operating procedure?
Well, it's that one, and then if you go and look on the what would that be, like the third sheet, you'll see that we have the same thing there, but for the Welcome Center pump station and the Broadway pump station.
Yeah.
So and the duck pond station is a new station as
Oh.
well. That was one that we replaced with SCIP money.
Oh,
So
okay.
we needed to get an SOP for those. DES requires us to maintain the SOP for each of the facilities.
Did you ever get what you needed for the water line under the road down in the southern end? Or are you still waiting on a letter?
Water line under the road.
Not water line, sewer line under the road. Remember that we needed to install the line
Oh,
under the road down on the southern end for.
I forwarded a letter to Phil Shirley, and I've never heard anything back that he had received it, and I haven't heard back that they haven't received it. But I did speak to the engineer about it, because I had the engineer draft a letter, or the body of the letter, to make sure that it included what they wanted, and that's the last I heard about it. So I told him if they had any issues with it, just to let me know.
I knew we had discussed it, didn't know if there was anything further you needed from us.
No, I don't think so. It was really more of an operational type of a thing. Yeah, I wouldn't really want to do it. We prefer not to have the line in the road. We prefer to have it out of the right of way for maintenance purposes, but to expedite it for them, as partners with this. We told them we'd go ahead and do it in this case because we felt it would be quicker to go in that direction than for the county to go and try to require easements on private property. There are other utilities on the shoulders of the road on both sides to be able to fit within the statement of way.
Anybody else got any questions for Ms. Eliezer? All right, we'll move on to number 2. Continue discussion for large developments is requested by the board. So it's been bounced back to us after some further discussion at the full board meeting. Me personally, I appreciated the additional input that we received. Going into that meeting, I was, in favor of supporting the reservation rights, but after hearing a lot of the comments from the rest of the board, which is always good, kind of changed my mind. That's just my opinion. To be shared here today is, I think this is something that it obviously would have been nice to provide to the developers, but, I'm with the rest of the group. Pay to play, and I spoke with another developer in that area the other day. I won't name it who they are yet, but they were talking about how they wanted to get together with the other developments that were looking to develop in that area and work together in any capacity upgrades and investment in trying to, spread the dollars, amongst all of them better. So, to me, that example too was the way it's supposed to work. If these developers are coming into a particular basin, let them all work together and figure out how they can share costs and upgrade the capacity that's needed in that area. So, my opinion is, I don't think we refer this back to the board, but I certainly want to hear other comments from you guys.
So, as Scott said, it was a great discussion, and obviously the Westminster folks had gotten between themselves and talked, and I got it, and I was listening to what they said. But after I left here and just started, just off and on thinking about this, the original intent, I believe, Chris, was the two gentlemen that were sitting over here at our last OMP meeting, or one before that, they were worried about, they have a development and they've not paid any impact fees yet for it, and they were worried about the capacity that they needed to be snatched away from them by another developer that went ahead and paid for it. Is that a correct assumption?
I think that's part of it.
Uh-huh.
I don't think that's all of it.
I think it was more because of the phased development.
Mm-hmm.
With a larger development like that, they want to build it out in phases. They were concerned that while they were building out phase one, which they would have paid for the impact fees, they were worried that what little bit of capacity was left that would have been used for phase two, that another development would come in and pay their impact fees and eat up the remaining capacity in that area. So I certainly understood their concern, but my point is, if you're going to develop phase two, buy up the capacity and rock and roll.
Well, and so, and this really, I guess it's a public document yet because it's still in draft status, but we had received, the entity, those two gentlemen that were here had paid, they had paid to have a study done, and they had paid it through us, so we're the ones that are having the study performed, but they're just reimbursing us for that cost. And we had received a draft revision of that back, it was a couple of months ago now, wasn't it, Scott? And it was a couple of days ago, we had provided comments back several weeks ago, and it was yesterday, or a couple of days ago, that we had received back the next draft of it that included comments and questions that we had provided the first time. I went through that yesterday, and it provided a lot more information on it. The first version, I think, had some incorrect numbers as far as, at least with us, with our pump sizes and capability, and it didn't incorporate master plan considerations. The latest revision did. So I went through it, and it looked pretty good. So I sent it over to Mr. McLean after I provided comments yesterday for him to add to it, because the flow from where they're talking about doing the project it connects to our system, then it goes through Seneca's system, and then it comes back to our system, and then it's treated. So it impacts two systems, really, I guess you want to say three, with us, them, us again. It touches us, three separate times. So our pump station, according to that study, had the capability of supporting 206 equivalent residential units, 300-gallon units or homes. 206, I'll just say homes in this case to make it easy. But the Clifford Lee station, I think, was 150 or so. So and I think that had to do with the force main size, correct?
Pump station and force main.
Okay, so pump station, force main. So in either case, for them to get to the number that they were looking to get to, it was going to require improvements on both our systems. But the limiting factor here is the Seneca chain. So I think that, where I mentioned part of the equation is it isn't just procuring the entire capacity for what they want to do for their entire development, but it's also to make sure that if they do pay for improvements at the pump station and in the gravity system and force main, that they will be able to be locked in to utilize the improvements that they paid for, and somebody doesn't come in after they make these improvements and take capacity that they had, put in there for themselves So that's the other side of that.
I don't think that's any different than what we did with Brent Little. I mean, if they invest the money into those upgrades, right, to increase that capacity for their development, I would say that we would qualify that towards their impact fee payment, towards their capacity. And then if there's any remaining balance due to fill out the rest of the neighborhood, the rest of the development, then they can pay that remaining balance and they have the full capacity reserve. And then nobody could take it. I mean, that's kind of my thought.
And that I think was what Mr. Bronson said also, was just look at it on a case by case by agreement like we did with Mr. Little.
But he said something that I really thought a lot. We would be picking winners and losers. And I mean, how would the sewer authority be picking winners and losers with the concept that you came up with?
I think what he was saying was by one developer coming in and being willing to reserve capacity, you're thus choosing them over another development.
Okay.
Because you're saving that just for them, and if another development came in and wanted to develop quicker or even a nicer, they couldn't. So we were actually choosing this development to reserve capacity for, thus negating the ability for another development to occur. So, we live in a capitalistic market economy, and if you want the capacity, you want to do the project, and you got to be willing to put some money into it. So, I thought that it was a great program until that meeting, and again, if they want to make those capacity upgrades, then so be it. We'll qualify that towards their impact fee. We'll reserve that capacity for them, and nobody can take it.
Yeah, and it was a good argument, good discussion. It made me think, and of course, I support the county first and foremost, but Westminster and Walhalla, and I heard their arguments, they don't want it. And after the questions I just asked and the answers I've gotten, I will go ahead and I'm okay with discarding it altogether.
So that's fine. I've got, there were a number of points that were brought up at the board meeting, so I'll go ahead and mention those, and then if we want to, I obviously didn't provide copies of the original document. I certainly didn't take the time to modify it after the discussion the other day to include any of this, but I'll just hit on these points and we can say, what we want to do. So one of the points was that about reclaiming capacity if it's unused after a certain period of time, if it's not started or completed. Well, that's something that we're currently working on anyways with the revision of development policy. So we're trying to capture that in there. The second one was something that Mr. Bronson brought up, which was need for a non-transferable clause in the policy. And following the meeting, I spoke with Lawrence about it because, we already felt, that we had that in there. It wasn't explicitly stated in that proposed agreement or policy that we had, but it is captured and included in the impact fee policy. So that is the impact, once you procure capacity, it's not a commodity for you to exchange or buy or sell. That impact fee is attached to the land itself. So it's not transferable. Now, if you want to go and say that it's transferable by name to another party that comes in after the fact, just like anything else, you have a house, you're on sewer, you've paid your impact fee, you sell your house, it's transferred to the new owner automatically. And the same thing would be the case here, but you can't go and procure it for this part and then decide you don't want to build here, you want to move it over here. It doesn't work that way. So, if I understood it right, maybe I didn't, but it's not transferable to another site. Number 3 was about the paying a premium, and I think it was brought up, instead of 25% down payment, have it at 125%. And, and speaking with Lawrence again to make sure that would comply with law, it would work. We could do that. We could set it at whatever we wanted to, since it would be considered a reservation fee, and then credit it however we choose to do so later on. Set this one you brought up, Mr. Boulder, about reserving the capacity for a maximum of a year. We can set it whatever we want to do if we chose to do it. Then 2 points that Mr. Flynn brought up One was allow only Oconee County developers to participate in the program. And I wanted to make sure that I understood that correctly, because, you know, you talk about the winners and losers, you may be doing that in that case where you're saying, well, we're only gonna allow Oconee County. So I wanted to make sure that I understood him right to say that that was doable, but in a conversation I had with him, he said, yeah, absolutely, we can do that. We just would need to set some parameters around what would qualify as a local, you know, a local participant. So in our, you know, we have a local procurement option policy where we give a credit, you know, some may want to call it a discount, but we only give a credit to those that are local vendors when we go and procure something. So they may not have the lowest quote, but we can award them because they get a credit because they're, you know, locally sourced here, but they have to meet certain conditions, you know, physical presence in whatever the location is. So we would have to have something like that if we did decide to consider who was going to be considered a local, you know, or an Oconee County developer. And then finally, about Oconee County to purchase capacity for industrial users to allocate to areas that they want to develop. When Lawrence said that, I think he became a little confused in a parallel discussion that we had, and one that I don't know that it has taken place at this committee or if it was at a board meeting or if it was F&A, but, you know, a while ago, Jamie Gilbert had come and spoken with the, you know, a group, whether it was one of the committees or whether it was the full board, I can't remember, but that, about phasing, you know, allowing an entity to pay over time, you know, pay their impact fees over 2 or 3 years. And so Lauren, we have been, you know, speaking about that as well. So I think that was where he, you know, he mentioned that and combining the two things in one, because that policy that we had didn't have anything to do with that. So, you know, again, those are all the points that we spoke of. So with that on the table, I'm fine with doing whatever, but there was some really good conversation that did take place at that board meeting. I'm totally on board with just putting it on the shelf and leaving it there indefinitely.
You're talking about raising the fees to 125% of now, from a county perspective, what does Greenville County, Pickens County, how do they charge? Do they do anything like that? I guess my thinking, would we still be competitive as far as a county to want to develop with
You
those
know,
kind of charges?
I reached out to a couple of other, you know, areas that were around here, and the only one I found that had any type of a program in place was REWA. But theirs was a little different than what we do, and I couldn't even get them to provide it to me in writing. So, you know, not that they did or didn't have it, but they just, you know, we talked about it on the phone. I spoke with an engineer about it on the phone, and he seemed more interested in what we were, you know, and at that time, that was when I was writing it. So this was maybe back in September or early October timeframe. He seemed more interested in what we were doing here, and if we approved it, provide them with a copy for them to consider how we were doing it here, because he, you know, I think it allowed it to be locked in over a longer period of time that you know, on the front end of things, maybe not even tied to the construction permit issuance by DES.
And this is REWA.
Yeah, but you know, again, don't necessarily quote me that is their absolute policy. But they were the only ones that I did speak with that did have some type of a program in place, but it was not what we had.
Okay, thank you.
All right, is there any other discussion on that item? Chris, I know you put a lot of work into that for nothing, so we recognize it, we appreciate the information, and and, offering up opportunities to improve. So my apologies on behalf of the board and the committee for asking you to put that work in and then not following through. So-
No, I mean, we got good things out of it. I think it was beneficial to us to go through the exercise, and I'm fine with the outcome.
You never know when you might need it, you put it back on the table.
And the biggest thing too, that I think that when I began looking at this, it was more to do with the portion of it that if they paid for upgrades, that they would be able to utilize the upgrades they had paid for. It was more to look at it along those lines, because, the reason why I was able to sell or convince, if you will, or be able to recommend approving Brent Little's project, it added a little bit of capacity for others to be able to connect. So it did, 100, I think it was 100,000 gallons extra per day. But the big selling point for me with it was a consent order item, and it was a $4 million replacement of a pipe. So that's $4 million that we didn't have to pay, that we were going to have to eat at some point in time, right? To get out from under the consent order because of the numerous breaks that we've had on that force main over the years. Mm-hmm. So that was what really convinced it to me, plus the fact that cost was well in excess of what he would have paid in impact fees by, I think, over a factor of 2. Mm-hmm. So to me, it was that was an easy one, but that always may not be the case. So it's going to be, there may be times where they may owe $2 million in impact fees, but the upgrades only cost, $500,000. How do we work that? Do they get a credit for it, have to pay the difference, or how do we work that? So I thought that was, in my mind, what kind of spurred the thinking of coming up with that.
I would think so. I mean, if they spent $500,000 and they had a remaining balance due for the impact fees, well, to reserve your capacity, you need to pay the full balance, credited with what you had to pay to upgrade. And if we want to give a higher, percentage of credit because they freed up additional capacity with that upgrade for the basin, then so be it.
So the exercise, the mental exercise and having the discussion was worth going through.
Yeah.
All right, item D, the indefinite delivery contracts. We've got some recommendations here coming out of the evaluation committee to go with Weston and Sampson and Ardura engineering firms. Do you have anything you want to, Mr. Lindsay, offer on that, Chris? Either one?
Well, I'll say that we received a total of 9 statements of qualifications in response, which, in speaking with Jennifer Barrington, I'll talk about her involvement in this in a minute. Mm-hmm. I didn't know what to expect. Jennifer was pleased with the turnout that we received. As you have before you, I gave you this handout before the meeting today, but that we had an outside consultant who has been, she was the engineer at Anderson Regional. They're Anderson Regional Joint Water System. So they're kind of a sister entity down in Anderson County that sells wholesale water. So she retired from there back several years ago now. Some of you guys may know Jennifer. And now she does consulting work. So she's done work for us. She's done work for, done Greenville Water, maybe West Columbia or some places in the Midlands. And so we brought her on with her being familiar with going through these type of things in the past because we would value her input and involvement. And also we used it as kind of a training opportunity for her to spend some time with Jake, who is now, being brought up into, learning how to go through doing these evaluations. So the evaluation team consisted of Kyle, Jennifer, and myself. So I included the memo to show, Jennifer submitted this to me by email to show that she did approve of the recommendations. But of those 9, the 2 that we recommend moving forward with, I think the couple of things for me that pushed those 2 over the top is they both of those, for whatever reason, and this wasn't something I expected, but it was something I think we saw the value in once we got it. Those were the only two. They included partners. So the Ardura included a partnership with Bolton and Mink, right? Bolton and Mink, and then Weston and Sampson included Arcadis, which we've worked with one or more of their engineers in the past before. So we gained, basically, it's, it shows 2 on here, but we're essentially gaining 4, fairly large outfits. And then but maybe even more valuable to me than that was that those 2, their project teams included folks that have been here, like on our side of the table. They have been in a wastewater system. They have done engineering work and overseen projects as an owner of a system, not just as a consultant. So, hopefully you'd be able to appreciate the value that you have folks that have been in our world before, and they can view projects from the time that they hand us the keys to something and they're done and we're stuck with something for decades. So they I believe can see the value of it for the longer haul and not just for the shorter term while they're involved with the project. They can view it as from the owner's perspective as well. So that's what I viewed when I recommended those 2. I don't know if that worked.
I concur with everything. It was actually easier than I thought it was going to be. Because of
And they're looking,
partnership.
hopefully they're looking for a longer term commitment, other projects, other jobs within our county.
And the way these work is, for years now here, we have had to go out there and advertise for each design project, which it takes time to be able to put together. And for, early on, for the first several years, maybe to 2023 or whenever it was that we had adopted the current procurement code or in general, I think we've revised it a time or 2 since then, but we didn't even have the ability to go out there and procure an IDC contract consulting firm. So now we can do this and we don't have to go and advertise each project that we have. We can take those, as you can see on here, we've got several that we've been waiting for this to happen. With one of these being the design for the replacement of the Speeds Creek pump station, as well as some work that we have here, where we don't, this would work, this would work if I were, understood correctly, even with competitive procurement for engineering services, for even like the SKIP projects, as far as design, selecting a consultant team to do that work. So, I'm really happy with the 2, which is really 4 organizations that we had received information from. So, I'll let Kyle speak for himself, but I certainly recommend allowing for the negotiations with those 2. And I should say too that these were requests for qualifications, so cost was not a driving factor in the decision-making process with this, because we're looking specifically at the ability to provide the service, but this will allow us to negotiate any costs associated with the work that's being performed.
Yeah.
And if we can't negotiate it, then we'll reconvene and decide what we do moving forward.
Jennifer certainly had good things to say, and then of course Kyle does too.
Well, do we hear a motion that we recommend to the full board to authorize the executive director to negotiate and execute the indefinite delivery contracts with Weston and Sampson and Ardura?
Yes, I'll make a recommendation, I'll make a motion that we recommend Weston, Sampson, and do a motion to do that.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second on the floor. Do we have any further discussions, questions, comments? All right, hearing none. All in favor of the motion by way of aye? Any opposed? All right, motion carries. We'll go to full board.
Thank you.
thank you guys. I think that's gonna be a good process for you. It's gonna make things a lot easier. Okay, down to the executive director's reports, discussion compliance matters. Take it away.
All right, the only item I have, Kyle, I don't know if he's got anything he wants to mention since he's here or not, but we had received, was this yesterday we received this, or a couple of days ago? We as part of our consent order, and having CMOM, and having to go through and do evaluations of our system, CCTV, clean, determine repairs that are needed in the system. This was really, I guess, I think, I kind of consider it to be phase 3 of the evaluation, but in reality, it was probably phase 2, or the original phase 1 being the very high level spot to determine where we need to begin looking at developing these phases for our 10-year cycle for inspection and cleaning of lines. So this portion here goes from the influent pump station on site westward, and is the largest diameter pipes that we have in the system, which is 36
Wow.
down to a 30-inch up to, I think it's where it connects with the southern Westminster interceptor, correct, Kyle? So, it's 30 line segments or thereabouts. It goes from the plant, again, it connects with the line that's currently being rehabbed as part of what was the phase 1 project that's being funded. The construction work is being funded by the SCIP grant. So we had the first, I guess it would be more of a high level evaluation of that CCTV footage and smoke testing results. We smoke tested that as well. We had a contractor come in and evaluate it. And I was a little bit surprised by this from the cost standpoint, because I don't know what, with the CCTV work, the rehab work, the largest we had on there was 15-inch, right, Kyle? So this is all, what we consider to be larger diameter pipe, but their upper end of that rehabilitation of this line here is about $8.5 million. 8.5 million. So, and I think that it states in here, and let's find it right off, but I think that they recommended that be done within the next 3-4 year time frame. So, that being said, we don't know how we'll move forward with that, other than, because that's currently more than we collect annually in fees with our current rate structure. So I think the best option, the only option that makes sense when it comes time to do that, is either going to be through additional grant funds and or debt financing of that project. So I want to go ahead and get that out there, because we have since gone through, and it'll be in the budget next year to begin evaluating the CCTV footage that we had performed last year, which is on the entire basin upstream of the Martin Creek pump station, as well as there is a remaining portion on the other western side, correct, Kyle? That's over near US Engine Valve, I think. So that we don't know what that's gonna entail. The evaluation portion of it has been done. We've completed all the smoke testing, and we've completed all of that. So now that'll be budgeted for again, to begin looking at a high level estimate of what the needs are gonna be for that. So in our capital plan here, we estimated that site-wide improvements, this at the very top of that list, over the entire 20-year period would be about $25 million. I think that goes back to July 2024 costs. So, we have accounted for some of that, if not all of it, in there. but we just averaged it out, just straight line, at about $1.2, $1.3 million per year, averaged across that entire 20-year period. So that's what we have. So again, that's brand new to us. So I asked the committee to begin, thinking about how we'll move forward, because again, that's consent order related item. We are going to be doing some improvements to those manholes down there as part of our SKIP project, hopefully, as with using the remaining funds that we had available. That it's been designed, correct? Maybe 90% design. Kyle has to go out, and you're working on that now, I think, to go out and obtain quotes on some of the materials, because we want to procure the materials ourselves to be able to get those in quicker than waiting for the 30+ days for the advertisement and the bid that's required by SKIP to advertise it on SKIVO. So we've been working with RIA to make sure that if we do go procure those manhole rings and covers, that we will be reimbursed by RA from the SKIP grant funds. So that's where we are with that. Do you have any other projects? PAA, you want to give an update on where we are with that?
Yeah, so as y'all know, we were approved by DES construction, and we were waiting on the NPDES permit to come out with the PAA on it. That was finally released and approved. So our new permit went to effect November the 1st of this year. And so the last step was getting basically lab certifications and getting, well, when we went through the study, we technically didn't have to do anything any different with our lab equipment to do the study, which we were on for approximately 2 months. I've been talking with Scott Miller at Lyman, who's been using PAA for since 2021 full time, and he didn't have to do technically anything but submit some paperwork to DES for the lab, and that was it. Because this is such a new product, there was not any proficiency testing kits that you could buy to get certified equipment and stuff. So with that being said, I was expecting a fairly quick and easy process to get everything. Well, DES is now saying, oh no, you go have to do this, 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 and this. So it has delayed our start. And I was actually wanting to start yesterday feeding, and I had reached out to them with an email saying everything had been approved. Can we start using it and continue to work on getting the lab equipment certified? And they come back and said that no, they want us to get certified before we start using it. So it's putting another delay on starting the PAA, but we're kind of at their mercy. Paperwork wise, we should be done with everything. Actually, I hope by tomorrow. We got Roger Alliance, our lab that we use, we've already put together, well, the application is ready to be submitted. Our SOPs for all of running our equipment has been completed. All we have to do now is run initial demonstration, but they do not make, because PAA is so new, there's not a kit that we can actually purchase to test each individual operator running a test. We have to make our own solution, and that was my thing. I was trying to look, if we can't buy the kit like we can for everything else, this is a process. We're going to have to get another lab to help us make the solutions, and they just keep adding everything more to our scope to get things done. So anyway, that's where we're at. He's actually supposed to be here today. He's been running solutions. I had to go, they want us to run 2 different PAA samples, physical PAA samples from 2 different lot numbers. So the PAA that we had ordered, well, of course we used it, but I had to go to Lyman and get Lyman's wastewater plant, get a sample from their PAA, so we'll have two different, totally different
Yeah,
lots
great.
for the lab to set up solutions off of, just to because that's what they said they wanted.
You know, we think the federal government's got regulations.
So, I mean,
States doing their
You know,
thing.
I kind of I definitely understand kind of from their standpoint, but I told them like, we didn't have to do anything. And we ran it 2 months and y'all were fine with all the data we give you. Nothing has changed, but
Mhm.
anyway, so they just putting us through some hoops. And so
Okay.
now it's just gonna push things back a little bit more. And then the final thing, I think what's going to maybe take even longer, or the longer time, is actually getting somebody from DES available to come out here once we have everything submitted. They want to lay eyes on,
And that person would come from Columbia?
probably.
Okay.
Yes, that's where the labs, most of them come from, so. Anyway, that's kind of the update.
So we're having to order
Yeah, we had to
cylinder
order
at
some
a
more
time,
chlorine.
chlorine. Is it one cylinder at a time we're ordering?
Well, we went ahead, I think, and ordered 3 just to get us, I mean, now it's, you know,
Take
So we
take
were
a picture of
hoping-
those Christmas presents, send it to DES and say, we got you some Christmas presents up here, help us out.
so,
So and then, you know, the last thing to talk about, since you brought up the NVDS, is part of this new NVDS permit we had to develop an aluminum and low-level mercury reduction plan. Is that what it's
yeah, mitigate.
called? So we're having to work with the industries. Allison sent them all letters, I guess it's been a couple of weeks ago now, trying to gather information from them. And then we've got to go out, and I think we have to actually physically inspect every dental office for our low-level mercury
Really?
program.
Oh, my God.
So Allison, is requesting, and I think, you know, we had to put together like a written plan and submit it to the state. But now, I think the plan is now to go and get an inventory, because we don't have an inventory of the dentists located in the county. It's not like phone
If
books.
you go to my
exist
dentist,
anymore.
don't tell them I'm on this board. I don't want to really,
So
Oh my
she's,
gosh.
says her plan is to request, because this is something that DHEC back years ago, they were gonna oversee this program. So they required, and Allison, I think that's the name of the form, but they required like a one-time submittal that all dental practices had to submit to the state with information on it. So she's requesting the information from them to find out where all the dental offices are in the service area so we can begin planning inspections. And I think they try to reach out for us. Well, I think we may be one of the first in the state to have to go through this. 'Cause
Why?
we don't know. We don't know why it's in why they stuck it in the permit. We, in fact, it wasn't even in the draft permit.
That's right.
It wasn't until it was in the final permit. So we spoke about, you know, we need to challenge this. You know, they threw this in after it went through public notice. And they're, you know, we went, you know, with Michael, it's like, we don't really have any recourse. They're allowed to do it. So we're stuck having to do this thing we never foresaw coming, even with the draft permit.
If you think the grease trap deal brought some controversy, you going into dentist offices, that will,
Yeah, well, the thing with most of the dental offices now is they have some type of an amalgam separator, I think is what it's called. If not, most, all of them have something, or they ship material off, or whatever the case may be. And that was why DES or DHEC back in the day required that one-time form to find out how they work. Because I think it had to do with, is it fillings
Yeah.
that mercury's involved with? So it had to do with what they did with the material associated with fillings, if I remember correctly. So we don't, you know, it's gonna be a burden on us to do these if we only have to do them one time, a time obligation, but I don't know that I foresee us becoming the police of this. I guess ultimately we very well may, because we're the ones that have the sewer use regulation. But if everybody was in compliance when they provided this information at DES back a number of years ago, then
More
maybe
so
there's not
now,
gonna be any
yeah.
issues.
Right.
So we hope that's gonna be the case anyways, that's gonna be the best case scenario. So that's the environmental and regulatory update, Les and Kyle, I think. Thank you for your information. I'll move on to number 2, which is an update specifically from you, and this has to do with the flow meter station and the weekly reports that we send out, and I don't think they get sent out to the entire board. I think that, I don't even know who Amanda Kelly typically sends these out to, other than the utilities directors and maybe.
I get it, yes.
Okay, so you do see it, the weekly
Yeah.
flow.
Yeah.
So those have been kind of hit or miss for the better part of a year because of some issues that we've had with some of the equipment. So when you look at it, you'll see big blocks of missing data where there's a, I think it's maybe orange cells in the report, and I'll let Kyle address why that's been happening and what, what we're doing. And it's not as big of a deal anymore because we're not using those meters for billing purposes like we used to do when we had the pro rata share model. But it's still some great and valuable information for us and the utilities to be able to pull and to see how rain, especially rainfall, is impacting the system.
So our Richland Creek flow monitoring station, the Mydro, which is the instrument basically it uses to do the flow monitoring, it went down, and so when that went down, it was actually an older model, so we actually upgraded to the next model. So had to wait on it to get here after ordering. All right. Once it got here, I had to wait on to get the installation done, and then they had to come back and calibrate it. When they came back and calibrated it, it was calibrated that they didn't put a parameter that it needed. So we get these every week, so I can see a daily flow. So again, it was probably 6 to 8 weeks that we were waiting on the instrument to come in and get it installed. We got it installed. I was like, okay, everything's good. I said something's wrong because it was only getting like 10,000 gallons a day when it needed to be upwards of 60.
Wow.
So I got them to come back out. I had to wait another week. So again, just the flow of everything, it just kept pushing things out. I said, okay, recalibrate, everything's good. We were perfect for a week, and then something happened. I said, something's wrong. My guys went out there and looked, and the bracket that the ultrasonic was on, we don't know if it got bent, but it got offset, and that's what, so again, that was the last thing that happened. Since then, everything, I've just been waiting. It's been past 2 weeks. It's been 2 weeks since we found out. But I saw where just out of the blue that one day we might have 30,000 gallons and the next day it'd be up to 70. Well, it got me thinking, they were doing work on that line. So they've been put plugs in, bypass pumping. So it's throwing, and I've just been waiting. I just want to see. So they're through technically
Who's they? Who's what?
Bionomics.
Okay.
So, yeah, I think it's tomorrow they're actually technically
Except
off.
for one manhole.
One manhole, which it shouldn't be a big deal. So again, I told Amanda, like, I'm gonna sit down with you because I am about 5-6 weeks behind from approving that flow. I just wanna make sure everything's good. But there is a reduction that I physically see because of work and the lining and stuff. It has gone down. So, and what, Westminster things are doing. So anyway, but
That's the reason there's been no data for Richland Creek. Okay.
So again, I just been monitoring the flow. There is still an issue with what we call the pulse. Every 1,000 gallons, it gives off what they call a pulse, and that is supposed to be the absolute most accurate. But we also have that flow meter. The pulse, it's still a parameter wrong. We have our semi-annual calibration next week. They're coming to do that. So that will get resolved at that time. Again, we still have our analog flow that I'm still looking at. Everything's fine. So anyway, I just want to give you all an update, kind of what's going on with that flow. It just takes time with things. I mean, especially electronics. You get one little thing off and it throws everything off. And And again, I want to watch it for another week when the next week's flow come out so I can compare and look, analyze, and go back and look at graphs. So,
All right. Any questions about that? I'll move on to the next one, the standard agreement for ownership, operation, and maintenance of developments. So Westminster, with a subdivision that's in the design process currently, with them foreseeing that there's gonna be consolidation, they just went ahead and turned this system over to the sewer authority to oversee the design, operation, maintenance, and ownership of this subdivision, once it's, if it continues to move forward. So, we've gone through, done all the plan reviews, we have approved everything. They've gone through the revisions to meet our our design standards. And it kind of occurred to me, this was after we'd approved everything, that we don't have any type of an agreement with these developers to put in place to make sure that they comply with all of our requirements after we get, especially after the permit to operate is received. We didn't want them to just walk away from it until we received everything that we needed to once the development moved forward. So I, began working with Pope Flynn, and this is only maybe 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago. So we began working on a draft standard agreement that we would use with such developments, which would certainly apply as well down along the I-85 corridor. So it was something that was needed. It wasn't really ever thought of because with us being in the wholesale business, but so we again began working on that, and it's still in very much draft status. We looked at it, provided comments, gave it back to them, and I just got the second draft of that back from them yesterday based on the comments and questions that I had. So this, and I want to make sure that this is going to be okay, or what you all would think the direction would need to be. But ideally, and this is comes from the attorneys as well, ideally this would be a standard form that we would use at our discretion. But it could be, with it being an agreement that's executed by us, for the betterment and the protection of this entity, the document needs to be approved. Now, the board can approve these on a case-by-case basis as developments move forward, or ideally, and this is recommended by the attorney as well, that the board would approve it as a standard form, and we would execute it on a case-by-case basis without having to go before the board. So the base of the board would approve the language of the form at the recommendation of us and council. So that again, still in the works, but I wanted everyone to be aware of it. I don't know what the cities do. If y'all have an agreement that you use, do y'all have one?
It's gonna go in our letter of conditions.
So this, because we have a letter of conditions, and we provide that too, but there's no teeth to it. We don't oftentimes, like with easements and things like that, we've got to push and push and push to get some of these documents that we ask for. And oftentimes we still, like the letters we send you, oftentimes we still don't get a lot of that information.
We have our letters of conditions, and then we will not issue the letter of acceptance until we get all those documents.
And see,
That's kind of how we.
but some of this stuff is even after the letter, even after you, because we have to do a letter of acceptance as well. But some of this stuff is even items that may be complete by the time you issue a letter of acceptance. So this would have to be signed before we'd issue a letter of acceptance before they get the permit to operate. But then there's questions too about response time for warranty related items, and if we have to go and approve and repair something, if it's deemed an emergency under warranty, that they reimburse us for that. So it's fairly comprehensive. And again, you'll see a copy of it once it's finalized, and to present to you all. But I just wanted everyone to be aware that is something that we're working on. I was hoping to have it in place for today, but it just wasn't wasn't ready. But, you know, do you have any preference as far as, you know, each, you know, case by case having to go to the board, or just a blanket approval of the form itself? And also just gauge which committee you feel this would need to go through. Would it be this one, or should it go through the F&A, because it would be an administrative type?
I would think us, as far as operation planning goes. Now, I don't recall this ever coming up before. And you're saying this subdivision is in the city limits of Westminster?
It's not in the city limits.
Oh, okay. But the city asked you guys, because of your design expertise, to take this on, okay. I think a blanket document would be the best,
It'd
yeah.
be easier.
Instead of every time.
I agree with that too, but if there's a
That's
strong
not-
feeling about it, that it wants to go case by case, I'm fine with that as well.
You know, I mean, you can have a blanket and certainly have, you know, an addendum section to it if there's anything specific to a development that isn't customary across multiple developments. So, you know, I would think there would be a provision in there that, you know, addendums can be added as necessary to fit the design of the development or something, so.
That's all I have with that. Miscellaneous, this is just something I thought of this morning, actually, and I wanted before the holidays hit. I knew that there was going to be some time being taken off. I had spoken with Mr. McLean, this was Monday, I think it was, about some of the Seneca meters and customers. Were you able to find out anything about that? So just to let everybody know what this is about, you know, whenever we get the statements from each of the cities each month, you know, the information we get from the billing is the number of residential customers billed, the residential volume that's billed, non-residential customers and non-residential volume. And you know, I go and enter it, you know, into a sheet, and this helps me to determine and forecast what to budget for the following year. So, you know, as expected, you could see, as you can imagine, on average, the trend is upward. You know, we're a growing area. Well, I noticed that for the month of November, there was a considerable drop by about 300 residential customers and about, what was it, like 70 or so non-residential. So something just appeared wrong, and it was just for that 1 month. So I asked about that. Did you?
Yes, we did figure that out.
Okay.
So, of course, we read 18 cycles. It was the way the data was pulled from that 18th cycle.
Uh-huh.
And so this month, you're going to see a higher number.
Okay.
It was the young lady that pulled it wasn't exactly familiar with how to do it. And I think it was actually, that was billed like December the 1st, and she didn't pull that last cycle.
Gotcha.
So that's why it looked lower than previous months. So
Well,
this
there's
month,
something.
it will look higher, but then next month, it'll all go
I
back.
thought it'd be the Kiwi snowbirds going back to Florida or something.
I knew there was something.
Yeah, that's what, because it threw us for a loop too, and then when I got to researching and asking questions, that's what it was.
Yeah, I knew it had to be something kind of simple like that, but it did. It just
Funny.
stood out to us for certain. That something just.
We're just trying to cut cost was all.
So you're talking $8.5 million, and then the rates are going down.
Collected the revenue, but we cut costs and.
So thank you. That's all I have, sir. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Any other discussion for the good of the board that the committee wants to present? No other discussion? All right, just make a point to check out. We're starting the new year. I guess this is our last meeting of the year for both the committee and the board. So happy holidays to everybody. Merry Christmas, happy Hanukkah, whatever holiday that you celebrate. We hope you have a great time off. Spend some time with the family. Be safe out there. And we look forward to getting back together in the new year. So please make a note of those meetings coming up in January.
Yeah, well, Holly, he said that he didn't have to travel very far.
There you go.
He's gonna not even have to use a Uber, he just walk over there. Why is there no finance meeting?
We didn't have anything to
Okay.
discuss on the agenda other than to approve the the monthly, the November
Yeah.
report, so that'll be on the board agenda for January to approve the November financial report.
And everybody's good still for January 15th at 8:30 for our next committee meeting. Good? Okay. Well, if there's no other business to discuss, we stand adjourned.